in port, you only need to run enough, consume enough bunkers to run the generators, which, to keep the lights on and that kind of thing. And then they only consume a couple of tons a day. So in fact, the stay in port is more or less the same. So the destination is calculated exactly the same. Tacoma versus New Orleans is about the same. So your total time in port is maybe about 15 days. And then the balance is sailing time. And actually the sailing time from New Orleans to Taiwan is about double that from Tacoma to Taiwan. So it's because you have the stay in port. That's why there's a difference.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay. Yep. John? One hand, John. We can come back to it. I can try and. This one, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm also wondering, if you are, you've got here Tacoma to Taiwan and NOLA to Taiwan, but you're taking NOLA to Taiwan across the Atlantic and around the Cape, am I correct? To get the 64 days?
No.
You're going through the Panama Canal?
Through the canal, yeah.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons why you have less intake as well, because the canal is draft restricted. Yeah.
Okay. All right, one more question. Mark, hard to be bearish, right?
That's a good question. In the next few weeks, it's very difficult to be bearish because the Capes are just driving the show. What we've seen is, we've talked about it quite a lot. You had the crisis in confidence, letters of credit, a huge issue. And by the way, one of the countries that managed quite well with letters of credit throughout was Vietnam. I don't know how, but they did. So letters of credit, a complete block, because bearish commodities, bearish freight, no one is buying. So the whole machine just grind to a complete halt. And I think what we've seen in the last month or so is a restocking, a bit more than a month, restocking of the pipeline. And probably also the Chinese have seen a good opportunity to get some relatively cheap commodity plus freight. So the big question now is there real demand behind this with the structural programs they have in China, all the stimulus packages that we have? Is there enough real demand behind this to keep it going? Which, if you look at the forward paper markets, the answer is no, because there's an inverse. Right? There's a, how did you call it? Something else, contango or something. Backwardation. So there's an inverse in the markets, and so we don't really believe in it. Right, we don't think it's going to continue. But over the next, I would say the next few weeks up to maybe a month, it's difficult to be bearish because the tonnage counts, particularly on the Capes, and again, this Capes driving this, in the Atlantic, close to zero. I think in the next 15 days there are 2 or 3 ships, and there are cargoes. So charterers are basically begging Cape owners to say, take my cargo, I don't care about the money, I'll just pay whatever you want. And in the Pacific you have a decent amount of demand, but the main thing there is the congestion. And where we thought that maybe the Panamaxes would come and relieve that situation, and the Panamaxes are they're below the 2.2 ratio level that I mentioned before, they have also started to see a bit more interest on the coal side. So I think my personal view, and again it only engages me, but over the next few weeks to a month it's difficult to be bearish, but I would say beware of the correction, because when the correction arrives it could be quite brutal as well. Volatility, right? That's what we mentioned before.
I have a question for Dr. Berger. The market fleet growth that you project until 2012, does that reflect the possible cancellations, or?
No, that does not yet reflect cancellations. That is the order book. And
this is optimistic scenario, so to speak. In the best case, you do not foresee that.
Optimistic from the user's point of view.
That's right.
So from the ship owner's point of view, it's pessimistic, because freight rates will remain on a low level because of this high growth of fleet.
Right. So in other words, if you factor in the cancellation, that growth would be possibly significantly lower.
Yes, if there's a lot of cancellation, but the question is if you have whether you have cancellations already effective this year, because vessels that are to be delivered this year should be already in the process of building, and it's difficult to cancel. Maybe they are postponed a little bit in delivery, but cancellations will become effective in the market earliest next year.
And do you have any monitoring system in place to track the cancellations at the moment, reliable one?
It is hardly impossible to say something really valid about cancellations, because ship owners don't want to be this published. The banks which are involved are usually not interested in publishing because they are bearing part of the cost of cancellations. And so they don't want to have this in the public. The databases we use, for example, from Lloyd's Register or from Clarkson's, both have no real information about the effective cancellations.
Okay, thank you. With that, we're going to finish this presentation. If you have any more questions on handy markets, bulk markets, please reserve them for the later discussion at the panel today.